Hello there, my friends. Hank here, and today we're going to be tackling the Soviet colossus known as KV-2. The KV-2 has quite a reputation among military history enthusiasts and oftentimes gets a lot of flack for its design. I asked you guys to send me some of your favorite incorrect names for the KV-2, and you certainly did not disappoint, so thank you for that. I finally picked up Tamiya's new 2021 retooling of the KV-2 last week to check it out, so let's paint this thing up. We'll begin, as always, with a coat of black primer to give us a nice base to work up from. A little history behind this beastie. The Klement Voroshilov, or KV series of tank, began production during the interwar period and followed the simple Soviet design philosophy that seemed to dominate at the time: big armor, big gun. The original KV-1 tanks, armed with a 76mm gun and a smaller but equally heavily armored turret, first saw action during the Finnish Winter War and performed quite well, but the Soviets weren't satisfied with the KV-1's high explosive capabilities when it came to bunker busting static emplacements along the Mannerheim line. So, with a quick design tweak, aka slapping a 14-ton, 4-inch armored box with a 152mm howitzer on the same hull, the big turret, KV-2, was born. Well, it turns out that the good old days of trundling up to fortified emplacements wasn't really happening as much by the time of Operation Barbarossa, and after a couple hundred KV-2s were produced, production shifted back to solely KV-1s with the smaller turret. Despite its short combat run and rather silly-looking design compared to the rest of tank evolution during the war, we have to imagine that the KV-2 must have been a terrifying sight to see if you were inside a Panzer II on the steppe on the Eastern Front. Anyway, now we've got our primer coat on there, let's go ahead and spray this whole thing up with some 4BO Russian green, doing our best to avoid overspray onto our tracks. I decided that with this particular build, I wanted to achieve the look of a whitewash camo that has been almost entirely scrubbed off or worn away, almost as though this was painted up for winter combat, survived the season, and is now ready to head into the snowless spring months for some more action. We're going to do some chipping here, so to prepare, let's load up our brush with some hairspray and spray a coat of that all over our kit. With that complete, let's load up our brush with some satin white and spray a nice thin misting of that all over our turret and our hull to act as our old whitewash. Now, using a stiff bristled brush and some tap water, let's start reactivating some of that hairspray and pulling off most of that whitewash layer. What this should leave behind is just a bit of white in the nooks and crannies of the vehicle, where a bit of white paint might be able to cling on a little longer than on the more exposed areas of the tank. Keep in mind, while we're working on our turret, try to keep our brush strokes in a top-to-bottom motion going with gravity. This will help create some more convincing natural streaking. So, here's our KV with most of that whitewash removed. I'm liking it so far, but it's way too clean, so let's get some weathering going. Let's get a coat of gloss varnish on here to protect our work so far, and we'll get after it. We're going to begin with a rather heavy-handed pin wash using some flory dark dirt. I've really been enjoying this clay-based wash lately because it's water-soluble and it's very easy to work with. So we'll get some of this on here along the details of our tank and then start blending the wash in with some tap water. This will help the grime flow into the recesses and details of the armor and create some artificial shadows and accumulated dirt effects. We'll do the same thing on our turret, again being mindful of the direction of gravity with our streaking motions. And here's how we're looking after that first pass of wash. Simple, dirty, effective, and quite a dynamic range of color between our greens, whites, and that grimy filter of sorts. Now, at this stage, let's start making a real mess. Flipping down here to our running gear, we're going to start with some ammo streaking grime and blot that in along the top and bottom portions of our hull sides. We also want to get a coating of this all over our tracks and account for some splash up onto the front and rear glasses plates of the tank. This looks quite bad all by itself, I know, but this is only step one, so stick with me. With that streaking grime on there, let's take some enamel thinner and start to thin that out. You'll see this is going to start flowing and blending onto the surrounding areas of the tank, and will also help give us a binding agent of sorts for our pigment effects that are going to come next. Let's next take some winter soil pigment and start to tap that off our brush so it falls onto our wet enamel weathering effects that we've applied so far. The pigment is immediately going to start soaking up some of that enamel and binding to the sides of the hull and to our tracks. I really enjoy applying dirt effects this way because I find that the natural clumping of the pigments behaves, well, natural. The effect looks really real because this is pretty much just dirt clinging to the tracks and to the tank more or less as it would in real life. To add a little variation, I like to switch between at least a couple of pigments. Here I'm adding some Russian earth to our mix, and we're going to be applying this in the exact same way. Now, once our pigments are on there, the key is to walk away and let everything set. No brushing, no modifications, let it dry. Go do something else. I'm going to leave this for an overnight to settle. Now, here is our tank in the morning, and I'm really liking this dry mud and accumulated dirt effect. Using our empty airbrush, let's give the model a quick pass to blow off any pigments that haven't clung onto the tank. And then we're going to load up our matte varnish and spray the entire tank right over the pigment work and everything to help seal this all in and knock down the shininess of our previous gloss coat. And with that, we've got ourselves this behemoth of a tank, war-weary and ready to take its place on our shelf. Simple stuff, but it works pretty well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, my friends, be well, happy building, cheers.